Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I'm discussing war. What is it good for in D&D with this nerd?
Nerdarchist Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Absolutely nothing.
Say
Ugh.
it
I'm,
again.
I'm awesome. Mondays are always a great start. It's like the first day. I mean, even though we sort of work all the time, it's like, it's the first day, it's the fresh week. It's exciting, and I usually get to catch up with one of you guys talking about D&D stuff, so it's awesome. And whatever nerds are hanging out today.
Indeed, sitting here talking about war, and there's so many different angles to
Mm-hmm.
to kind of go in. Um, I was actually
It's
trying
a big thing.
to I was trying to do some research to as I usually do to
Sure.
talk about, hey, what can you do. And I know in earlier editions there was like mass combat rules.
Mm-hmm.
Look for that in the DMG and wasn't able to find it. There's a variety of other things you can get in there, but
Yeah, there's like the mob rules and
right.
stuff, but yeah, nothing.
But
I think it might like touch on big battles, but not.
and like you can't do every single person on this side and every single person on that side gets their attack roll. You're just gonna be there
Oh yeah.
forever. Uh,
Well, that's what's funny about D&D. It's like sort of evolved from people playing those kind of games and
mhm.
then wondering like, well, what's that guy like? What about the people in that unit? Like, what are their what's their lives like and stuff? And it's like, well, what if they just went over to this dungeon instead of fighting the war?
Yeah. So I mean, that is what it is. It's certainly going to be challenging. It's certainly going to be interesting. But if you're going to do a war, where do you start, Doug?
Well, that's part of, I've like you, I like to research and think about things a little bit to some extent. And really, it's such a both humongously broad thing, but also small thing too. If you think about like, I mean, basically it's just armed conflict between factions, whether that's like nations and stuff. But I mean, in like the quasi medieval-esque fantasy settings that, a war could just be like, I mean, people go to war. It's just like, well, I'm going to send my 50 guys, to fight the next barons, small force. I mean, it's not like they're massive armed conflicts with like huge stuff, but there is magic and whatnot. It depends on your world and those dials turned up. But really, I mean, you could easily do a whole campaign with the right tone from like 1 to 20. And it's like starting out, I mean, there's all sorts of things that can be done in a wartime situation. And it's tied to peace in the sense that, me and Dave, or I focused on this last week in the sense that, like, well, people usually try to, like, there's not always conflicts going on because, that's like humans' natural state is to be aggressive. So it's like
Indeed,
there's
yeah.
only not wars because people are working to prevent them. So, even if you had this broad like war campaign idea in mind, and you could kind of go either way with it, I guess is what I'm saying. If the players are like, oh, we don't believe in this, we want to try to work against it, it's like, okay, well, you could still be that tableau of this growing war like situation around them. So that's probably where I'd start at first level.
So my initial thoughts when I begin looking at all of this is, really the question of like, are you looking to have the war as the actual game, or is war just the backdrop for it?
Mm,
I know when my first, 4+ year campaign concluded and we went down to a session zero, um, I wanted to move away from Griffin Gaff so that I had the capacity to, truly give uh, a whole new area of the game,
sure.
of the campaign world that we play in, a chance to kind of get developed, to thrive, what have you. So I came up with, we got, Himrick and Hoggleford over here, and we have got, the city of Gronor, which in the earlier history of our lore was a entirely orc based, civilization.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided we're going to spice things up, incorporate the dragon emperors into it, and this is a war torn place
Okay.
where a red dragon has become an emperor of Gronor. So the primary citizens are orcs and dragonborn. So one of the three options that I put out there was, Himric and Hoggleford, their combined kingdom is at war with Gronor, and this is what's going to be going on while the campaign is there. So you're going to
Sure.
be dealing with, some political intrigue of the war, that there could be, friends and allies on both sides. So it could definitely, have some fun there. But they decided to move away from that direction and go in a different direction. Um, but as a backdrop, it's a lot easier trying to run the game because you can 100% narrate this is what happened when you weren't looking, as opposed to, well, this is what
Yeah.
has happened over there while you're directly involved. Um,
Right. Yeah,
little
that's a great way to, like, show not tell too to the players,
mm,
just like, things that happen, or when they go to places and or return to places, maybe things are different, and that's why, and they're not necessarily involved. And you can do that with any sort of themes or background, but yeah, in this context, that's a pretty big one. And there's always that possibility that maybe there will be some line, even if they were like, hey, we don't want to play that campaign, that they're like, man, this is messed up, like maybe we should help or do some, or you could just see those kind of adventure jokes. They'd be laying all around. I mean, especially if it was like a active, war situation.
what happens if, time is of the essence. You have to go now, but you have to get through a battlefield. You have to
Yeah,
get where you're going. But
like in Wonder Woman movie, when they
yeah,
were like the no man's land area.
so when you look at all of that stuff, that begins to change what choices you're going to make.
I mean, yeah, and as the DM, you have that dial of like escalating the war too. I mean, you think about like something like Star Wars, it's like, that has a lot of themes that are, clearly laid out like by the FFG thing, where it's like, well, there's, the Force and those kind of dramas and tensions going on, and there's this like seedy underbelly going on, and there's also a galactic war with the rebellion going on against it. And that kind of sucks everybody in at some point, because in that context, it's like vampire is clearly, the enemy. They're bad. Like, they have no good agenda and stuff. So it's going to affect everybody. And even a scoundrel like Han Solo, can get involved because they see like, well, even though I didn't want to get involved, that just is affecting you.
And that makes that's a completely perfect point. That is what Star Wars is. Like,
Yeah, it's a war in the stars.
The war is going on, and you are dealing with these players on the outskirts of what's going on. And like, I didn't really think about it when they made 789.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, why are we still dealing with a war? Somewhere down the line is like, well, look, it's Star Wars, so there's got to be a war, rather than
Yeah.
just accepting that this is the concept of
Right.
it came from. So like, I not that I'm any kind of major Hollywood producer,
Yeah,
director,
sure.
writer, but I would have not kept the war still on. Let's move in another direction here. You
Yeah.
can have the fun things.
Yeah, well, that is a big part of it, though. Star Wars, and it's interesting. Those are some compelling stories. Like one of the notes I have, like a trope that I enjoy in stories and video games and stuff, is like that sort of ultimate soldier, like war master character that also knows that they don't always want to fight. I see Dave popping in the background. That might mean there's some technical issue going on, but I'm just going to keep talking because maybe not. But yeah, just that sort of, veteran person where it's just like, or Solid Snake from Metal Gear or something like that, where, they know war so well. It's like, look, you don't always have to fight. I don't always want to fight. Rambo is a great example too, where it's just like, don't, come on, like, I don't want to do this. Like, we don't have to do this. It's just going to be violent and bloody, and that's no good. So that's a great trope to play with in a warlike setting, and soldier background could be great for that.
Oh, of
For a
course.
D&D character, like
Yeah, I mean,
somebody
if
that's
you're
just seen war, been in it, and it's like, the thrill of battle that D&D and fighting monsters appeals to. It's also, in a realistic sense, pretty dramatic and probably traumatic for characters all the time. I mean, you see people die and get melted and stuff all around you. It's pretty gross and weird. Has an effect on you.
well, I mean, that winds up going into a whole nother aspect of, you know, if you decide you're going to play a character who was a soldier and you've been to war, what does that mean? Like, are you legitimately, do you have any PTSD? Like,
Yeah.
like, even if it was a long
It's
time ago.
interesting. A lot of times when I play D, sorry to cut you off. This is
Yeah.
real quick, but maybe it kind of dovetails into what you're saying. Like that same, thrill of fighting stuff. It's like, who wants to do that all the time? Realistically, like even if you are like the most awesome warrior in the world, it's like you don't want to have your life at risk constantly. I don't know. That's something I think about a lot. But anyway, sorry.
So yeah, it was just like, even if it was a long time ago, like, oh, my soldier background is what I'm taking, even though after that I went on and became a druid, a wizard, a cleric, a fighter, whatever have you. Fighter I don't think works with this example, but like the actual act of picking up a weapon and swinging it could be a problem. It could be a direction, an RP moment, a flaw, if you will, for your character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And actually, a fighter sort of makes sense though too, in the sense of like, well, if you're like some ultimate soldier background, I mean, compared to a commoner, a first level fighter is like that. You probably could have survived some much more than the average, enlisted, CR 1/8 guard or or whatever. I mean, you're a fighter, like you had something special. It's like, maybe you were the only one that survived. You could have survivor's guilt, like what if your whole unit was wiped out by a monster and like you were the only one that survived? It's like maybe you hid or you beat it off, at the end, but everybody else died. It still would leave its scars on you.
So, I mean, that's just one of the angles.
Yeah.
You've got the backdrop, but if you're actually going to play with the war as the actual campaign, as you were initially talking about, like,
I think it's important to make the characters feel like they're doing something important, even if you start at first level, like in context, like maybe to what you were saying earlier about having to get across a battlefield, like just something like that, where it's like there's the war going on and your job, like we need you to go over there and deliver this thing. That could be a pretty important mission, and like, even though you're not fighting the war because you're just a first level, party, it's still like you're still specialists, and it's like we don't have anybody else. That'd be pretty exciting, dramatic, I think, and just showing that backdrop and getting their feet wet a little bit. Maybe like, oh, maybe we should help out, and then even getting close, it's like, oh yeah, you catch the tail end of like a fireball. It's like they're out of its radius. Even just describe like it's sweltering. Like if you were in there, you'd be toast.
The specialist team was the direction that I was thinking about going.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun,
because that allows you to, like, all right, you are going to have to focus on obtaining a certain objectives.
Oh yeah, good point.
Getting behind the enemy lines, taking out specific targets, neutralizing an enemy's special weapon, which like you could then enter into like a moral quandary of, well, what if the special weapon happens to be like a super powered child? Like, they've got this thing. Oh, well, do we take out this child? Do we kidnap this child? Do we run away and leave it?
Yeah, it's so broad. Like, you could really, that'd be definitely something that would help, with session 0 of like, well, you could kind of make whatever kind of characters they want, the players. And then just because there's always going to be something that they're particularly good at together. that you could sort of, cobble together in that session. They're like, well, so you guys would be really, you'd want to like gather intelligence if they were all like divination and, stealth and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, you could really craft it and still keep your same sort of, campaign structure.
Right. And with the specialist angle of like, we're going to keep the adventuring party together. You get to narrate what is going on with the other options, as opposed to having to, forcibly roll out a lot of things, or, oh, well, you know what? Tonight's session, we're going to have to put you into the thick of it. And now there's freaking, 20 soldiers headed your way. Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do when the mage is like, this is too much and I'm going to back up, or I'm going to go to the side, and you don't have the positions of where everything else is moving,
Right.
chaos of combat and what have you. It enters into a lot of craziness, to try and get there.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, for dabbling in that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people have put out stuff to like manage, large conflicts and stuff. It's funny. One of the things I was looking up, as I always do, is just like in the official materials, like what does that have to say about war? And, of course, came across like war magic for wizard, and I don't know. I don't dislike that thing. It's kind of power creepy now that I was thinking about it, because it's like it combines the best parts of evocation and abjuration. It's like even like they even have like flavored text in there of that display, illustrating that. They're like, well, what if it doesn't help if I die before I cast the fireball? But it is still like on a smaller scale. It's in the sense of like, well, it's not war magic. We're like, oh, your fireballs can, you can expand the area of like, do like you could go to like the kind of magic you would go to war with.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, it's a smaller war. It's your party's war against not having gold in their pocket.
So,
it's the war and the level up chart.
now, kind of building upon that concept, and kind of related to what you see in anime, where larger magics can actually get out there. Do you feel that there's any kind of necessity for like spell casting that can affect larger squads?
I mean, for me, yeah, I know there'd be a lot of people that would love that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've never played games where that would be a thing. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's not on my personal radar, but yeah, I'm sure tons of people would love that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I would probably just play a war game or something.
Lately, I've been kind of power binging through a number of Netflix shows,
Uh-huh.
and something called Dota, Dragon's Blood. Came across my view screen.
Okay.
It's 8 episodes. It's based on a video game, and very cool. Very much not for kids. A lot of swearing in it.
Oh yeah.
But some of the magic that's in there, like it's like, oh, well, I'm gonna do this thing, and you just see vast amounts of magic affecting a whole squadron, 20, 30, 50 people that just get empowered with this magic or get teleported with this magic. And I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. So
I guess I would say my first instinct would be like, that'd be something where like a group of people could combine their magic to like, if everybody casts like enhance ability, then the area is increased like exponentially or something like that, or a fireball or whatever. But there's high level magic that every now and again, I mean, as much as we all look through the rules and read them, check out, research all these things, there's still things that surprise you. Like, and it just actually came up on Critical Role the other day, but like Caduceus is going to cast Forbidden, since like that is a hugely powerful spell. It affects like a 40,000 square foot area, and it's like anything that's I don't quote me on this, but I believe it's like anything that's not from the material plane is just like constantly taking psychic damage while they're in there or something like that.
I mean,
and you can't teleport in or out of that area, like no banishment, no misty step, nothing. It's like, damn, that is really powerful.
Well,
You know?
that is what you begin to get when you're talking about those upper echelon spells.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's intimidating to me as a DM, honestly. Like Magic in particular, because it's like, you know what? And I was thinking about this when we were talking about like the early levels of like a warlike campaign and it'd be all gritty and stuff. It's like, man, real quick you'd have to be on your toes because like characters get so many crazy spells: scrying, teleporting, mass invisibility, polymorph, just tons of stuff. And that post I wrote the other day was all about like communications methods and stuff, and it's like there's a lot
and
of different options out there.
Truth be told, I'd like to see more. So,
oh yeah, I'm not against it. I'm just saying, like I said, for me as a DM, it's intimidating because it's like if you don't match or try to like balance out the rest of the world in the context of the players, they would just like they could rule the world. It's like, well, nobody else is like scrying on their enemies constantly and stuff. I mean,
well, it takes powerful magic. So
yeah. Like I say, yeah, it's just I haven't DM'd a lot of games like that where they're just like high level, high powered magic stuff.
So minor deviation here. I'm going to jump into the chat. A little shout out to Nicholas for hashtag Octothorpe. Totally love that. Keeping the Dungeons and Delving aspects going strong. I love it, and that's Doug's character Tabitha. So it's awesome. The Dishonored Coward wants to know with the history with the goblin and the grenade. I'll give you the super short, sweet version of it. Dave and Ryan were the ones that initially came up with a concept for Nerdarchy. They wanted to go with a goblin, and because they researched everything they could possibly think of that related to the concept nerd, and the only thing that they could find that wasn't already owned or copyrighted was Nerdarchy, which is alive and well today.
Yeah.
So you kind of have like nerd and anarchy. So like there was a bit of chaos thrown into the mix.
I always looked at that different. I always thought it was like a monarchy, but nerds.
That was Nate's interpretation, and that's why,
really?
That's why he was Nate the Nerdarch.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Nate the Nerdarch was the one who looked at it as a monarchy, and Dave and Ryan kind of looked at it as like, well, we're Nerdarchists because it's anarchists, but we're Nerdarchists.
Okay. So more subversive. So
I didn't really care which direction it really wound up going in. I kind of went with the group.
What do you feel though in your heart?
I mean, I'd rather us be, a monarchy. And I don't.
Lawful, it's because you're lawful or you're neutral good, man.
I don't claim this title, but my wife calls me, King of Nerds.
You are a nerd's nerd. It's because you're neutral good. You're just plain old good. It's like, you gotta be subversive.
I do consider myself neutral good. I feel that's most apropos. But so because it was viewed as anarchy, the bomb became the thing, and since we
just got demonetized,
and because we were looking at fantasy based, like the ye old bomb with the the wick.
Oh yeah, classic.
And we
got the international symbol for a bomb.
You have to stamp the the big old N on it. So
always be branding, always be hustling.
So that's the super sweet short version.
Dave has played a goblin bomber in several like short campaigns with people.
He has. I like goblins. I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too. I think they're a lot of very cool.
I know we're a long ways away, and drifting further and further from war, which we'll get back around to it in a moment.
We've already talked more about it than Dave and I talked about peace last week.
Well, see, I was prepared for peace. I had done like.
Oh, really? Hey, well, I mean, you can't talk about one without the other. Believe me, it was pretty hard.
So anyway, but I don't know if it's going to be allowed. But when we get around to Steven's game, I might very well play a goblin in that game.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll all play goblins. That'd be pretty cool.
Mm.
You know how I like those all everybody having some similar element
Sure.
thing to.
Yeah, I don't, Steven has already begun discussing what kind of game they're going to run. But I don't like he's talked about like preparing, his session notes. So I don't know what's going to be.
I think it's funny because it's like he's very much a writer and he's like going for like a tone and a
Mhm.
genre and it's just like man it's an RPG like you could do all that and there's very likely we're like yeah we're not gonna do that. I
Well,
mean not even like consciously just like yeah this is gonna go to different
I
directions.
guarantee
Not
you,
to tease Stephen, I love Stephen.
if you present a concept for session zero, I'm gonna buy into it.
Oh yeah
I'm gonna come to the table prepared with that kind of character.
sure
So like I don't know if in his world it's possible to be a PC goblin and be able to do the things that he wants us to be able to do.
oh right
I
right
might get run out of town, but maybe I'm, literally, not figuratively, literally on a chain, and I'm bound to one of the other players when we go into town just for safety's sake, and I would be cool with that. Oh, I'm Doug's pet goblin. Sure, I'm cool.
yeah
Uh, you know, but if that's not going to work, I'll push it aside and I'll come up with the next concept. But
yeah. Oh
I,
yeah, man. I never get too like married to any character ideas
Mhm.
in
well,
that way. It's
there's
just like, dude,
always
I get yeah,
there's always new stuff that's coming out. There's
yeah,
always things, and I don't get to make enough characters.
yeah, right.
I'm in like 7 or 8 groups, 3 of which that I'm DMing. Um, but I still don't. It's not like a rotating thing where I'm constantly making new characters.
Yeah, right, right.
Literally, the Tuesday night group is the one that we get to make the most new things.
Hmm.
So this has been fun.
Boy, those are some of my favorite characters in my whole life, honestly, just from these 3 campaigns.
It's a fantastic group, and
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
they're all great to play with. So.
Hmm.
I will throw this out since we're mentioning it. Don't forget to tune in to Dungeons and Delving tomorrow. We got episode 10. I will throw out that the following week I am not going to be around, and without a DM, we can't very well delve the dungeon. So there will be a week delay before we get to session 11. But it's definitely, I've got a lot planned for tomorrow night, hoping that everybody seems to have fun. Um,
Yeah,
but,
pretty safe bet we all are loving that game.
but I will also be back Friday night with episode 3 of Untraditionally Arcane.
Oh, nice.
Sadly, we will be down a player, no V that night. But we will struggle forth and get to see where those interesting characters get to explore more with the untraditional wizards and see more of our Nerdarchy's Beardomancer in play here on the channel.
Yeah, we got 2 customized spells from Jake from Mini Terrain Domain that are Ordo's personal spells. Going to be in our April reward, Patreon rewards. So I'm pretty excited about that. I just am so captivated by him playing that character. I mean, I was talking to somebody today, maybe it was Jake, like of all the stuff we've done, I honestly like that Beardomancy stuff the most, just because it's silly and it's kind of, wonky, but like, we always are like adding these little, like just throwing out little bits of lore about like beard dimensions and stuff. It's fun.
I love that kind of stuff
Yeah,
myself.
me too.
I mean, even though Beardomancy was kind of created from a real world joke,
Yeah.
I love what we have brought to life, and I love the directions that it's.
And Jake just,
and Jake does
Ordo Wonderbeard.
Jake does a great job with it. I happen to play a Beardomancer as well in another game, though that's not a streamed game. I don't think that DM would be very happy to have that game played, and since there's a bunch of kids, it won't get streamed.
Hey, we don't have to stream it. We don't have to have everything online.
But I have an elf who was raised by dwarves, so my son in that game is my Elf's dwarven brother, because I was raised by his family. So I play Aragar Amberaxe, the Elven Beardomancer.
Yeah, and now we're gonna have all subclasses for all the classes based on beardomancy, from the barbarian down to the Crinus Spinner patron.
I was very, very impressed with the barbarian.
Yeah, like that.
I think that was a name that I came up with.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I don't remember, but yeah, that's awesome. A perfect name. To touch back on Dishonored Cowards thing too, with the history of behind goblins with grenades. There's also goblins with grenades riding giant bats. If you want to get really crazy in your D&D game, it is the first encounter in out of the box encounters, and I think it's Dave's favorite, Aces High.
Aces High, that is a good one. In a handful of weeks, I don't remember exactly when, but Jasper's Game Day is coming up. And,
oh yeah.
In during that week, where the Dawnbringers normally play on Thursday nights, Jake is going to be running a Jasper's Game Day game at a different time slot. It's going to be a little bit later than the normal 8:30 start time, but he's going to be running with a completely separate set of characters, and he is going to be running things out of the box.
Oh, cool! Are you going to be playing in it?
I am not in that game. Starting a game at 10:30 at night is just a bit out of my comfort zone.
See these gray hairs?
Yeah, they're definitely there. But it's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to catching that on the replay at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
See how he does, because Jake is a master at taking prepared material and giving it his own little MTD spin, as he's for all the games that he's that we've played together. So very much looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Cool.
And of course, getting his feedback of what he liked and what he felt needed that that extra kick.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't be happier with Out of the Box.
Oh yeah.
So as I mentioned, the Untraditionally Arcane, I'm gonna take a spin. Some new Kickstarters that I've backed. My rewards have arrived. So our friends over Jake from XP to Level 3 was part of Eldermancy, Stibble's Codex of Companions. I backed this and thought this could be some fun things that are here. There's some awesome things in here for familiars if you want to make something that's out of the box different. Definitely.
Do all the wizards in Untraditionally Arcane have familiars?
If they did not have one, they all had been given.
Okay, I was gonna say, it's like, come on, you gotta all have familiar.
Well, I have plans in regards to familiars, so that's why I'm kind of pointing.
Oh, so there's probably a lot of fun things that gave you inspiration from there, huh?
Absolutely. So some things out of this book will most certainly appear within the realm of Untraditionally Arcane.
That's cool.
And if you happen to like animals and want to go in a different direction, another Kickstarter that I backed, Animal Adventures, Secrets of Gullet Cove, SFG, the people who put out, what do you call it? Cats and Catacombs, Dungeons and Doggies. It's fun if you want to play a literal animal as your adventurer. It's fun. It's silly.
Is it Animal Adventurers or Animal Adventures? Like, is it a book of adventures or is it a game? What is that actually? I'm curious.
But the character design of all of their minis are your animal adventurers. So if you want to play a dog warlock or a cat cleric,
it's a 5e thing. Okay.
Yeah. Supposedly that is what you've got here. I literally just got this in the mail, so I have not had a chance. It's still sealed in plastic. Have not had a chance to really dive in and look at it, but I'm excited to see what kind of silliness that I can get up to in my games in the future.
It's interesting. Like, I would never, poo-poo anybody creating anything like that. It's cool. Obviously, it gives you ideas and everything. But it's like games are so ephemeral to me. It's like, well, if you wanted to play a game where like everybody was cats or mice or whatever, it's like then just say they're mice and describe them living in a world where like there's can go in a hole in the wall and stuff like that, and and it's just like relative, right? It's like a
Right.
tiny thing in their world would be like a mouse relative and stuff.
Sure.
If there was like humans around, they'd be like titans that you just were like you got to run. There's nothing you can do against it.
And
But yeah, I didn't want to make it sound like I think those things are dumb. It's just if you don't want to invest in that stuff, it's like just just reskin it.
All of that is fair, and I pointed out, because I like to give back. I like to put new and fun things on the shelf. I like to see what other creators are making, and see, how can we make something that's different? How do we make something that is on a level with the things that are already out there and doing well? So I'm just showing these off. They'll appear somewhere on the shelf in the future. I just like to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was thinking I had some thoughts about war coming back to that, because I was actually looking at my notes. I'm like, boy, I went through all of them already. This is not good. But yeah, as a campaign, it's like, it's such a big scale, and I guess it sort of reminds me in the sense of like the big like bad guy that's going to destroy the world or universe or whatever sort of thing, in the sense of like, even if you're 20th level, it's like, what can you really do? Like, I guess high level play just intimidates me, but also it reminds me of that Spelljammer campaign where like there was brewing war like elements to that campaign. And like so many times the players are just like, like, why are we even doing this? Like, we're just 4 people. Isn't anybody else doing this? Or, they were like kind of discouraged. They felt like discouraged from not doing things related to that because it was so important. So I don't know. I feel like you really have to have everybody all in, but also, I guess, have you just have to have everybody buy into that.
So
that's what it's going to be about.
part of that, I completely agree with, of getting everyone to buy in, in relation to, oh, here's this major threat. Why are we the only ones dealing with it?
Yeah.
That asks a major question, and that question is, how big is your world? Not only in legitimate size, but how big are the threats to that world?
Right.
Is this adventuring party literally the only mega heroes that are out there, or is there so much crap going on in your world that the possibility of dozens or hundreds of epic level characters getting a reputation out in the world for the things that they're stopping from happening?
Yeah, I haven't, it's interesting. I haven't really ever had to consider that in games I've played, or yeah, because it's like, they just never went on that long, or it just didn't come up. But it's like, yeah, that is a good point. It's like, well, is this sort of like the, comics world where it's like, well, it seems like the threats are escalating because you're here, not despite that.
I bring it up because I ran a game after the conclusion of my game, and when Dave's game basically entered into like a permanent hiatus. I ran a one shot.
It's in torpor.
Torpor. But I ran a one shot in Gryffindor because I loved the NPCs. I loved that city. I lived in it as a DM for 4 years. And I realized you've got the characters from my game, the characters from Dave's game, the characters from the Scarlet Sisterhood, that all reached 20th level. Now, there's no guarantee that all of them were going to stay in Gryffindor, but like I know for a fact one of them is the mayor, 2 of them or multiple of them own a business. One of them, is my player character who, should he survive, that Vargarian temple, owns a temple within the city that's a library and offers free learning. So
didn't he cast temple like every day or whatever to make.
Yeah, he did the temple every day for a year
That's awesome.
to make it permanent. And like one side is entirely based on religion, an actual legitimate temple to
Sure.
Quintel, goddess of knowledge and magic. But the other half is entirely like library and classroom space where, he pays teachers to teach classes and things to students of all age.
On 20th level, I can pay their salaries for like
Ever.
eons.
he had so much gold that he literally had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, right, sure.
It was like, all right.
Well, that's an awesome thing to do with it. Donate it to like educating,
So like, what would Relion do with the rest of his time? He would continue to study languages and continue to study.
That's like one of those things that I like that immediately I thought of like real world things. It's like, so he's basically a rich philanthropist. It's like, what would he spend his time doing? By going to functions, getting free swag everywhere, and just getting paid to go speak somewhere. It's like, oh, I'm a 20th level cleric at Quinn. It's like, what I get for a speaking engagement? Costing me like 20,000 gold for like an hour. Get a swag bag.
But that's that.
I love thinking of that kind of stuff in these fantasy worlds. A couple things in the chat. Mr. Rab's cleaning service. Always happy to see them in the chat.
Haven't seen you in a while.
There was a question from Nicholas Schubert. Have either of you played a more realistic war scenario like no magic? I thought about it, but my players wouldn't like it. Not in D&D for me. I have several times. Not in D&D because it's like if a realistic, like to my point earlier, for me, in my experience, like the magic just makes it unrealistic. And playing like a gritty game, it's like, but it's in the game. There is magic, so you're either just ignoring that, or everybody has it except you, which sucks. So it's like, I'd rather play like a game that, because the mechanics are built to make you relatively good. It's like, yeah, nobody has magic, so like an awesome dude is like a guy that can get like shot twice.
And that goes into the aspect of the buy-in that we've talked about several times.
Yeah.
If you're going to play D&D, magic has got to be a part of it. Unless you're looking to do a la Conan, where I'm going to restrict your classes and subclasses to things that don't have magic and magical abilities.
There's a Conan game.
I know. I was getting to
I'm just
that.
being that guy.
It takes a lot of work to strip out the things where literally every class in the game, now including Barbarian, has access to magical abilities. So you would have to say no to all of these things. And it's far easier to say, you know what, we're going to learn a new system and play that where it's designed to be able to handle, rather than putting up, well, here's the red marker list and here's the black marker list. And
it would just be more exciting too, because like a game like Conan or whatever is designed for you still to feel like a badass. But it's like, in D&D, it's like, well, if you didn't equally do that to the enemies and stuff, it's like we need to fight a bunch of like guards and beasts. Like that's it. Which might be fun and exciting and realistic, but it's like, well, then you're missing a huge amount of D&D.
Exactly. The game is not designed for that. Yeah. Now, it is your table. You can do with as you will.
Sure.
I don't tend to enjoy realistic games because, like, all right, take for example, we had a game Saturday night and we played Monster of the Week, and I don't have my books over there. They're still over there where I was sitting. But we played Monster of the Week, and there was some pretty gruesome murders that were described.
Oh, really?
And, I didn't have a problem with that aspect of it, but my character used magic to view what had happened in the past. So he saw what happened. And, when he stood up after his spell was over and just casually described, those two had their heads exploded. Those two had their necks snapped. And this one here had its beating heart pushed out of its chest to its back. He just described it, casual, nonchalant. very brutal, very ugly, you know.
Sure.
But if you were to get into, you know, serious realism, you know, that's when you know, you get into, you know, sights and sounds and smells and, you know, lasting injuries and all of these things that are part and parcel of the game. And to me, that takes a lot of the heroic angle out of RPGs, which is my essentially what I'm looking for. I want to
Mhm.
do more than Ted will ever do.
Yeah.
I want to achieve what in this real world very few people have a chance to make that kind of big
Yeah,
of
I saw in the chat earlier somebody said like they would fight to the death for like things they believe in. It's like I wouldn't. It's like my character might, but me, no, probably not.
well, I mean, I won't go too crazy into this, but like every once in a while something will come up. You know, I watched a very ugly movie last night, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm like, yeah, I would die to stop that. Because everything that I was seeing on the screen was just wrong.
Okay.
Um, you know, but how many things are there? How many loved ones are going to be put into a position where it literally takes death to stop something from going on because you don't want to see it?
Right.
You know, that's, you know, typically things that I don't enjoy talking about. I don't enjoy seeing on the screen,
Yeah, right, right.
but it's out there. You know,
Yeah, I'm
it's
Swedish.
brutal. But so when you get into war, what is that really looking to do? What are you
Right.
honestly invested in? Why is war so important to the story? If you want that to be your backdrop so that as you tell the story, there is something dramatic going on, great. You have got things going on. So there can be things where, oh, you have this mission. You're timed. Do you go and get this done, or you happen to notice that this unit is faltering? Your ally, your friend Fred, is in that unit, and you can see that they're being pushed back. They're going to be overrun. Choice. You have this decision to make.
Yeah, you make a great point. Like, I guess part of that buy-in, and that you know, if you really wanted to like portray like a warlike thing, is like I think it would behoove a group to discuss like, look, war's traumatic. So like to your point, like you might not have a TPK, but it's like there could be times where it's like, hey, if you mess up, like a bunch of people you know are gonna get killed, or people that you don't know are gonna die
Mhm.
and stuff because you failed. Like without those kind of stakes, you know, it loses something. And
Yes.
I think they would have to, you know, to really, I mean, it's obviously like everything, it's a dial, you can turn up and down, but like
Mhm.
for super dramatic things, like you'd have to have those stakes be pretty tight and high and like, I don't want to say like, you know, engineer that they'd fail, but it's like it would lose something if you didn't fail once in a while and like have those
I
moments where you're like, damn, this is really serious, you guys, you know.
I 100% agree with you. You know, when you look at war, it's brutal, it's ugly, and as the song says, what is it good for? Um, you
Yeah.
know, but if the PCs win every single time, the drama gets dialed down. It gets lost. You don't get to have, you know, those moments of, you know, profound learning. Again,
Right.
jumping back to um, Monster of the Week, you gain XP when you fail a roll. That's the best way you learn.
Yeah, through
Uh,
experience. I don't want to do that
so,
again. I know that.
so, so like
Now you have a better chance of not doing it, I guess.
it's
That does make sense, even like a logical sense. Like if you can fail and be like, well, I'm gonna try extra hard to not fail at that. So you'd get better at that.
so when you're looking at, you know, the scenario, you know, you can put in you know, these moral quandaries. Do you help out the person you know, or do you help out the whole army, you know,
Yeah.
and complete your objective, knowing that you've got a good shot that your friend is going to die
Mhm.
when they get overrun?
And
uh,
even in the sense of like, do the play like as players, just like, do you, you know, like I keep thinking of like Star Wars because it's like it's a huge scale war, a galactic war. I mean, there's like
mhm.
trillions of people involved. And it's like think about like Force Awakens and stuff. They destroyed a galaxy with a laser blast. So that's like, people saw it in the sky. It's like, like everybody around knows, like, hey, this war just claimed the lives of trillions of people in one shot. It's like, that is crazy, man. Like, and just almost insurmountable feeling. So I guess in that sense, it's just dramatic and huge scale. But boy, if you did win against them, like they do in the movies, it would feel pretty damn good. Just like, I can't believe, like, but that's almost the only way you can beat. So it's like, you're never going to outnumber the Empire. It's like, you have to just, so it's like there was like a global war in your D&D world. It's like, there's no way everybody's going to muster enough forces to, take them out, especially if they had like giants and dragons and, beholders zapping on the battlefield. It's like, there's no way. Like every, civilization on the planet couldn't contend with it.
We're winding down to our last, 8 or so minutes here. I was going to pull out the whole box, but it's pretty hefty. You can scroll back to 2 weeks ago for the last live chat where I showed off all the things that are in our giveaway pile. You can sign up for our newsletter to get access to, that chance if you have not already. But there's gaming.
Yeah, there's like $200 worth of stuff in there.
Yeah, it's gaming books, an Easy Roller dice tray, a metal set of Easy Roller dice, as a puzzle from Dungeon Crate. It's a number of really awesome things that are in there. So if you've not already signed up for our newsletter, you really want to do so. We got, we expand on all the topics that we talk about here. We create subclasses, magic items, monsters, all kinds of fun things that you
deals on stuff, free stuff.
So. And it's free. So
yeah.
You should absolutely be, signing up for it. So, but if you have any questions, as always, put question, in front of your, questions so that we know to be able to call it out.
Yeah. Chris Hausnick, not a question, but they brought up like Dragonlance, awesome example of kind of like what we were saying earlier, where it's like, well, when you're low level, then it's like you still those little things that you do. It's like, maybe you go on little missions or maybe you just stumble on it as they did of like, they just happen into being critically important to the war because they had like the Discs of Mishakal and stuff like that. But they also, Chris also says like, in that same vein, like imagine when Sauron's attacking Osgiliath, it's like, yeah, it brings me to tears. Like, we're seeing like the Rohirrim arrive. It's like, that's pretty dramatic. It's like, there's probably still guards in the city. They're like, hey, I'm just trying to get people out of here. And those are like your low level adventures. That's super heroic too. They're huge boulders and wraiths on dragons attacking and stuff. It's like, damn, if you survive that, I mean, that'd be a heck of a early like tier 1 of your campaign, right?
Well, I mean,
like, I'm not going out there. I got to get these people out of here.
So like that's your hazard,
Yeah.
while it's being brought.
Yeah. Great point.
But by a creature that's outside your realm of dealing with, the falling shrapnel and that kind of stuff, you could still have that be within DC's set for the party. 11 to 14. Sure, no problem. Damage, D4, D6, no problem.
That'd be a great way to have like a villain, and probably the players themselves would like want to, would think of that creature as a villain of like, well, he wasn't fighting you, but it's like that, like I had to watch people die that I was trying to help because like that Witch King or whatever, like we're going to get that guy, or whatever it happened to be. Like, so that'd be a great like circumstantial thing for the players to, interact with and have their own motivations.
And so if you've got a world that like you could legitimately say, okay, this happened, session 1, you could have it advance a couple of years over the course of the game through gameplay, downtime, and that kind of stuff, so that you legitimately have epic level heroes ready to go face this legendary being that they witnessed do all of these things, and now are they ready to contend with
it? That reminds me that long Spelljammer game that was probably the longest campaign I've ever started with a war, and it was just like a shoehorn device to like set things up, but like they were conscripted into like they didn't roleplay this. I was like, yep, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time to get conscripted into a war to defend this town that you just happened to be in, and the person who attacked the town was none other than, I mean, if you're gonna go to war, war dude, baby. He's the one that like killed them, and then they wake up a long time later because they were in like a magical slumber and they're being taken care of by this paladin and stuff. And I used to, yeah, I never revealed this to the players or anywhere because I was like, oh, it's a spoiler. But this group fizzled out years ago. The paladin that they was had helping them was Warduke, and he was trying. He thought they knew some magical knowledge and blah blah. But they ended up leaving the planet. But yeah, I was so pleased because they loved that paladin guy and they hated Warduke so much, and they were like, they named their adventuring company after the paladin and everything. I was like, oh my god, they're gonna be crushed when they finally find out he was the villain. But so, they never went back to that planet. They got that ship, never went back, never cared. Even when I would like tell them like, yeah, reports say blah blah blah, they're like, oh man, no, let's go back.
When I ran my Curse of Narcotis game, I actually did at one point in time use war. I had the city of Gryffindor sieged.
Oh, okay. That's a great like hook to, or just scenario to put in front of.
Oh, of course. So at this point in time, the party was significant level. Like the general grunts of an army are not going to be sufficient to really do anything. But the battlements were lined. I had things prepped for a while leading up to it of like, oh, the city, the city's expanding. We're gonna build a wall and leave things open because we've got new business and stuff coming in. So there were areas that were literally just open terrain behind a wall. So it was great for, well, we can set up like the army tents inside the wall for the good guys, and some elves came and some dwarves came, totally Lord of the Rings style stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But when it came for the player characters, I'm like, okay, what are your plan? So they would watch and they would see, like where the greatest threat was, and then they would just en masse teleport the whole adventuring party to that location and fight, their daily battle against, that.
We're gonna go there, go Nova, and then we'll word every call.
But before they would head out, they would release, whatever kind of area effect spells from behind, against, the enemy, and then, out they would go. So like, but that was their tactic, and that was something that they came up with, and it was a lot of fun to really be able to see powerful level characters affecting. So like I created some party level equivalent threats for them to be able to identify. So for the couple of sessions that they were doing stuff with the specific siege, like that was the goal. That was the.
Do you remember any of like the major like conflicts they got into?
Yep. But it was definitely a lot of fun. I wouldn't, like, I guess that was kind of where I drew some of my inspiration from.
Sure.
Put war as the backdrop. But I don't think I'd want to do war as a whole campaign, but as a backdrop, I'm definitely fun with it.
Yeah, like if it was maybe like a few sessions or whatever, and then it died down, but it's just like an ongoing war that lasts. Yeah, I think it would just wear on me as the DM. It's like I don't want to think about this stuff.
Well, because war is constant loss.
Yeah,
people on both sides are going to die because if it doesn't, no progress is being made on either side.
Right. Yeah. That in that case, then you're just trying to work for peace, and then you got to go watch last week's video.
Indeed. So we are at 9:00. Yeah. As stated, we've got Dungeons and Delving and Untraditionally Arcane with yours truly in the DM seat later this week, tomorrow night and Friday night, 8:00 Eastern Standard Time, just like these. Come join us, hang out, watch some 5th edition D&D. Both a little off kilter with some stuff going on. You've also got Dave with the live chat at noon Eastern. Got some fun guests lined up this week. I know I enjoy watching, and I most of the time lurk while working in the chat, see what you guys are all talking about. Any
Yeah, and
final?
then over on the main channel, I'm only mentioning because I remember we usually don't, but we had you guys talked about the Path of Wild Magic video today, because we have new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then Wednesday's the College of Eloquence Bard, is that what it's called? Or Creation, College of Creation Bard. And then Friday is about are you railroading your players right?
Nice. So any final thoughts there, Doug?
No, I think it was pretty interesting topic. It hit all the things I wanted to talk about, and even get to meander a little bit. And it's always fun talking to you, Ted, about D&D
Indeed.
and whatever else comes up.
We
And thanks
will
to the people in the chat hanging out too.
we will always meander. We will always talk about some fun and interesting things. But I'm certain by now you know the drill. Until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.